and we're here. Hey guys, I'm just going to throw this out there because I'm just the director here. You guys have been amazing, and I'm grateful to be working on this film. But I keep getting these updates about these bills that you guys got going on, and there's just crazy stuff going on. What's happening right now?
Good question, Brian. Thanks you for the invite to come on tonight and to chat with you and Kristine for a little bit. So today we were successful in getting our medical kidnap bill, RS 33042, reintroduced. Definitely had a little bit of homework to do. Had to make 2 amendments to the bill. That was to remove the private right of action, which was a big sticking point for several of the committee members. But we did get that taken out. I went back and followed up with a couple of the previous no votes from committee, and I said, hey, this is what we've done. Would you be willing to give us an introduction if we bring this back? And the folks that were the ones that had the biggest objective to the private right of action, they said, yeah, I'll vote to give it a hearing. So yes, we were successful, and we did get the bill printed this morning. So praise God for that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just want to clarify, it's the medical neglect bill.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
sorry.
The medical neglect bill.
Yeah.
So,
and I'm trying to pull the bill number up right now because that's important.
It is. Yes.
Oh, yeah. I have it here for you if you'd like.
Yeah, House Bill 757.
Yep, you got it.
Mm-hmm.
You got it, yep. So there's been a lot of back and forth. I know a lot of people who are watching now are aware of that journey. It's been amazing that you guys have been so much camaraderie has been involved with working with the department, and then you, Lucas, being on the committee. I'm sure that was really helpful for you to kind of understand how to work with them and get this whole thing. But now I just want to let Kristine, will you tell us what's the recent events as to why we're here?
So today there was, it's all been positive until today when a news article came out. Let's see, it is the Boise State Public Radio. It's an article that was produced by, written by James Dawson. And I mean, it starts off with the title being inaccurate. It says the new bill seeks to loosen Idaho child medical neglect law. We don't have a medical neglect law here. We don't have medical neglect defined. And that is one reason why we're bringing this bill, so that we do have definition. So I found that to be a little odd, inaccurate, misleading title to start out with.
Interesting. And so, oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, the title is very misleading because this doesn't seek to loosen the child medical neglect laws. Well, one, because there aren't medical neglect laws currently. There are neglect laws. There's abuse. There's abandonment. But there isn't specifically anything in statute that is referred to as medical neglect. It's not currently defined. And the premise and what I've maintained about this legislation from day one is that we're trying, well, and Kristine too, when we've talked about this bill, the intent is to tighten up the statute to provide a place where it is we're reaffirming the rights of parents, right? To give that parent the ability to choose the medical care that is what they deem to be necessary and important and vital for their family and for their children. And there shouldn't be a disagreement between them and an allopathic healthcare doctor that holds them in a position of being challenged by Child Protective Services if they have a disagreement with the healthcare industry, their doctor, their primary care physician, whoever they happen to be being treated by. A differing of opinions between doctors And that's a lot of what is written into this statute, is to basically, one, reaffirm the right of the parent to be the one that makes the determination for the health care for their child, or the health care for the vulnerable adult, if this is a guardianship, vulnerable adult kind of situation. And then to not leave these people open to the potential of a CPS or a adult protective services investigation, because heaven forbid they have a differing of opinion with the healthcare professional.
Right. Yeah, and for those of you that want to dig even deeper into it and take a look, you can look at our statute, how it is currently in the Child Protective Act, and their Chapter 16, Title 16. If you look down at definitions at neglected, it's going to be on page 4, number 31, A, section A.
Oh, here, I'll pull this up for you, if you'd like, while you're talking.
Sure. Neglected. We do not have the words medical neglect in this statute at all. It says neglected, and that means one without proper parental care and control, medical or other care or control necessary for his well-being because of the conduct or omission of his parents, guardian.
Could you tell me that section again?
Sure. It is page 4, number 31, and it's A, so 31A.
31A, okay.
Yeah.
Right here. Wait, there is no 31A. Am I reading this wrong?
31, are you on?
So line 31?
No, in the Child Protective Act.
No, you're looking at
I think you're looking at our bill.
31 subparagraph A.
Oh, I thought you wanted the bill. Okay, so
well,
what are you reading?
In the bill too. It's in the bill too, so yeah, we can do it that way too. So yeah, you've got it there.
I mean, I could. Are you talking about the protection manual? I also have that. If you'd rather.
Yeah, I had that up. That's what I was referring to.
Would you rather show them that?
A lot of people are going to look at. Well, they can look at both now because the bill here is public. So.
Okay. So is it in the bill anywhere you'd like to show it to them, or do you want me to pull up the protection manual?
Well, no, because Lucas, 31 here on line 23, it says the same thing as what's in our statute right now, right?
Yes, that is current statute.
Yeah. Okay. So we don't have medical neglect defined. So that's just inaccurate, what they're stating right there.
Right. This first statement here.
Yeah. And then it goes on to say, so the title reads child, right? But then the first sentence in his first line there references vulnerable adults. So is he talking about which one, or is he going to be talking about both? Because the rest of the article doesn't mention what he's really referring to, the children part of it or the vulnerable adult part of it.
Right.
Yeah, the whole premise of his article is just completely way off base. This isn't about being given more ways to avoid criminal charges for medical neglect.
No.
This is about reaffirming the rights of parents to determine the health care that they deem is appropriate and necessary for their family, for their child, for the vulnerable adult.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is interesting too, because it seems to, I mean, just from an outside perspective, it seems to lean very heavily on this concern for, or this illusion that people are like avoiding medical attention or something, and that medical attention is always supposed to be one person's or some general perspective of how that gets done. That always seems to be an issue. And I'm just a guy in society, right? Like I've witnessed, I'd be curious what you guys think, and maybe this has something to do with why this is written this way, is that there's sort of this masking over the societal view of how you need to just do what one, there's a reason we call it a second opinion, with doctors. Why is there this assumption that like it's always people trying to avoid doing what an authority says, rather than it being the parents' free choice to figure out the right thing?
Well, and their recommendations too, right?
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Well, unfortunately, Brian, you've been in this fight as long as I have, probably longer. I think the first time we met was back during the COVID crisis. getting involved in protests down at the Capitol over mask mandates and stay-at-home lockdown orders and stuff like that. But the prevailing narrative for a very long time in American society is that we trust the institution. We trust the institution of government. We trust the institution of healthcare. We trust the institution of our academic establishment, and we're not allowed to question. We're not allowed to get a second opinion. We're not allowed to seek a differing opinion outside of that realm of and that sphere of influence, because that makes us science deniers. That makes us conspiracy theorists.
Right.
And we have to be in a place of where we just, like sheep, we blindly follow, and we listen to what the institution tells us. And if a allopathic healthcare professional says, this is what is, and this is what you must do, it's been a very a long-standing, unchallenged narrative. And, and we're reaping the benefits or the rewards of that now, however you want to look at that. Whether they're good benefits or wrong, we are reaping the benefits and the rewards of letting an institutional mentality govern America.
Right. Kristine, you said some other inaccuracies that seem to be at play here.
Yeah, so I guess the third one would be, he continues on to say medical neglect definition. He also says medical attention, like when to seek medical attention. There's a line that he references in there. There's a big difference between seeking medical attention and being medically neglectful. We are defining what medical neglect is. We're not telling you when you should or should not seek medical attention. And there's quite a bit of a difference there.
Yeah.
It says, he starts out the line where it says House Bill 757 would only require them to seek medical attention for life-threatening health conditions. That is absolutely not true. The definition of medical neglect, as our bill reads, means the failure to seek appropriate healthcare services for a life-threatening health condition that a reasonable person would recognize as requiring medical attention.
Right. And this, like to your point previously, Lucas, this type of language is indicative that we can't self-administer health anymore. Like that everything has to be done through a hospital of some sort if it's not life-threatening. What is that? It's called proactive health and maintenance. This always been a thing that we all have the freedom to do and seek our own way to do so in a society. And I don't know, I haven't read this, like I'm reading it in real time, and it almost seems like there was some concern here too about alternative medical treatments to be licensed or certified in any way. I'll be honest with you, some of the best people and the best advice I've heard is not your traditional doctor. It's not your traditional licensed practitioner. As a matter of fact, a lot of times they're not all experts in the areas that are needed. That's why we have specialists. But how is it that specialists are only considered, or they're not considered alternative? We got all this. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, well, I'd like to weigh in on this. So we have, this is really a bad statement for them to make, right? Where it says that the bill doesn't require the person, and I'm looking over here, I'm reading my computer screen while we're talking. The bill doesn't require the person recommending alternative medical treatments to be licensed or certified in any way. So let's go back to the basics here, right? I think it's 1850-403, it defines what a physician is, right? And a physician is defined as a medical care, loosely defined as a medical care provider that's licensed in accordance with traditional, like allopathic healthcare or osteopathic healthcare treatment, right?
Yeah, that's right. I'm reading it right now.
Right, and then it's Idaho Code 1850-404, if I'm remembering correctly, that details how it is illegal to practice medicine within the state of Idaho without a license. Okay, so it doesn't matter what you are. You can be a naturopathic doctor, you can be a homeopath, you can be whatever is currently licensed and available medical practice within the United States. If you have gone to school, an accredited university, you have received a certification or a graduation or a degree from that university or that school of instruction, and you can pass a licensing board within the state of Idaho, and that licensing board, there are licensing boards for every single one of these alternative forms of practice of medicine that we're just talking about, right? Nobody in the state of Idaho is practicing medicine without a license, regardless of how, air quotes, alternative it may be. So there's a reason that we didn't define that, okay? We're not trying to put into definition that can later be expounded upon by people that are trying to regulate it out of existence, which is,
right, again,
the conspiracy theorist tinfoil hat going on here. They're trying to push, and when I say they, we're talking about mainstream American Medical Association types. They're trying to marginalize and push out alternative forms of healthcare. And no, we didn't need to define that. We don't need to define that. This is Idaho. This is a conservative state, one of the last conservative bastions within the Pacific Northwest, where people come here to observe and to practice their religion, their healthcare practice, to homeschool their kids, to be able to observe their constitutional rights free from government interference, right? And so I'm always going to stand in the way of anybody that tries to regulate or define those specific types of occurrences. In this situation, it's alternative healthcare. And so the statement, I mean, almost everything that they wrote in this article is just completely way off base.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It concerns me that the author of this article perhaps maybe didn't even take the time to read our bill and just took it from whoever might have, somebody might have called him, for all we know. We don't know where this originated from, but when you're doing an article piece like this and you're raising public awareness, basically is what he was doing, you should have facts, actual facts, and not just construed to what fits your narrative. And I appreciate, Lucas, you for bringing up the constitutional rights, because it's our right in the care and upbringing of our children. And, our CPS system, our child protective system, needs to work for the people, not against them. And I have said that since day one.
Yeah.
There are holes in the system, there are gaps in the system, and they need to be closed. And this is one way to do that. And I'm not just speaking for me. I'm not just speaking from what the parents have come and told me, but I've had doctors tell me, I've had other officials come and tell me that without having guardrails like these up, they don't want to be removing children that they shouldn't be removing. They don't want to make those calls that are unnecessary, but they're mandated, they're mandatory reporters, right? So they're told to make this call on a 50-50 chance that child is being abused or neglected. That's not okay, because they're going to come out and they're going to remove that child without having actual facts and foundations first, just because a mandated expert made that call.
If I might share something too, just from a psychological standpoint, that and me as a concerned citizen, I'm getting really, I want to say tired of it, but I'm going to say more postured here. I'm very concerned about the language and the way that people view. So you can see right here where it says, I have significant concerns regarding the unintended consequences that I have shared with you. I feel like child protection should still be the utmost concern for all of this, right? What I think is really interesting is that there's this ongoing falsehood and many logical fallacies that are introduced around these subjects regarding caring for the kids, and somehow that being in conflict with self-governance and the autonomy of the family unit, because that is not true. And it is a psychological tactic that is either A, being used inadvertently and people are ignorant that they're doing it, or it seems to also be a mechanic. Not like you said, I'm not trying to be overly conspiratorial here, But we have learned over the years now that there are mechanisms being used to push certain avenues of strategy, if you will, for certain policies and ways that some view how government should run and how agencies should run. I think it's very concerning myself that the care for the children seems to be hinged somehow to this this battle against self-governance and the family having the freedom to choose what they want. Because if I go right now and I choose a good nutrition or a nutritional practice, right? I've got a good dietary balance in my life. That doesn't require a dietitian. That doesn't require a professionally licensed person to educate me on how to do that. And as a matter of fact, quite often, I have found that I have a better grasp on what is working for me than some of the advice that I've received from professionals. And that's because I've done a very balanced and I want to say, yep, good sourcing and research and really listening to a multitude of counsel, if we can use that term. And I find the right, and you can see the fruits, you can see the results. If they're saying that it's concerning that a family would be able to have less risk and with a more defined term, that just seems ridiculous to me, because this is actually going to protect the family to be able to make the right decisions by it being clearer for these agencies to understand what actually constitutes neglect. Is that kind of like what I'm understanding? Is that in alignment with why you guys were doing this?
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up, Bryan.
Yeah, I don't understand the confusion here. And to me, this article, it almost seems like it was very weak in the first place. There's not much to it.
No.
Do you guys expect that this will be the last of these types of articles?
I don't. Only because I don't think Lucas, I think Lucas will probably agree with me too. We're probably going to see a few more of them. But just from my standpoint and what I see and who I've talked to and who comes and talks to me, there are people that are very much against having any more bills like this being brought forward, because they're very pro for CPS, right? They're pro, they don't do any harm. And the reality of it is they do. And in our meetings that we have with IDHW, they've said, yeah, we've made mistakes. The mistakes happen. We can cut those risks and those mistakes if we have these bills in place. It's simple.
Yeah. You know, I've
But these people are not having the meetings that we're having with them. And for some reason, they don't want to believe what we're stating. So maybe they should come to those meetings with us.
It looked like you were going to say something, Lucas.
Yeah, you know, I appreciate everything that Kristine just talked about. You know, one of the big sticky bills that we have really been trying in good faith, I might add, to work on with the agency directors over at Health and Welfare is our medical kidnap bill. We have spent probably at this point now about 7 hours sitting and discussing line by line their objections to the bill, what they see wrong with it. And, you know, and I've used this analogy before. I'm not going to take credit for it. I actually get this one from Senator Brandon Shippey, and I think he's absolutely on point and spot on. We can be experts in our field. We can think that we have a 360-degree view of an issue, right? We can have the trainings, the certifications. We can have 20-plus years of experience in it. But you know what? There's always going to be 1,000 blind spots that we can't see because, let's face it, we're human. We don't have the ability. We're not God. We don't have the ability to see things from an outer objective view, all viewpoints, all 360 degrees of that sphere that we're supposed to be overseeing, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. It's the system in the world that we live in. But that's where the legislature is supposed to come in for these state agencies, right? That's why we have committees. That's why we have legislative review panels. That's why we have what's supposed to be a check and balance system to be able to sit and to analyze, to find the gaps, to find the holes, to make recommendations of, well, I think this is wrong. Let's fix this over here. Or we feel like this system needs to be tightened up because there's a lot of There's a lot of inadequacies over here. And, this is no different than anything else. Child Protective Services is a very big thing. And I want to just go on the record and say that none of the legislation that we're trying to bring is designed to undermine the simple fact that Child Protective Services, it was by design supposed to identify and to help children who are in need, children who live in homes that are just absolutely filthy, nasty, dirty, they're neglected.
Unsanitary would be the right term there.
Where physical, sexual abuse is running rampant, where drug and alcohol abuse is present. Yes, when those children are living in homes and situations like that, 100%, I think that demands state involvement. I don't want these children to be subjected to a life of danger and of horror and trauma because they have degenerate parents, shall we say. Mm-hmm. But it's for these other cases where children are needlessly being separated from their parents. And I like to use the baby Cyrus. I mean, that's one that everybody knows about, right? Mm-hmm. It made national headlines, baby Cyrus being taken away from his parents. Why does that need to happen? And my argument would be, well, it doesn't need to happen. It happened because there are gaps, there are statutory gaps that have not been identified up until more recent times. And those gaps have been identified. And that's what Kristine has been really trying to work on. You listen to her story. She has been a victim of this system herself. And I've come on board because I'm a person that believes that family first. I believe that we need to, one, keep the family together because the natural family unit is the backbone of American society. You cannot convince me of anything else. You cannot convince me that a child with one parent is set up for success. You can't convince me that a child that is separated from their parents and grows up in the foster care system is going to be living their best life. No, aside from the legitimate cases, again, of real, verifiable abuse and neglect, a child will absolutely have the best chances of living a good, productive life to grow up to be as healthy and happy as humanly possible when they are growing up underneath the care and the love of their parent.
Absolutely. And Lucas, to your point,
yes,
this has been on my heart for a little bit now, this is what's fascinating about this whole thing. And I think this really gets at the core of why I really appreciate what you guys are doing. I'm going to share this on screen here. So we've probably all heard this before, right? Government is instituted for the people's benefit, right? Not our detriment. And I was looking up, this is Black's Law Dictionary. I'm just doing a quick search for fiduciary capacity. Simple thing here. One is said to act in a fiduciary capacity or to receive money or contract a debt in a fiduciary capacity when the business which he transacts or the money or property which he handles is not his own or for his own benefit, but for the benefit of another person as to whom he stands in relation, implying a necessitating great confidence and trust on the one and a high degree of good faith on the other part. The term is, so my point of sharing that is that isn't CPS, don't they have a fiduciary duty here? Because when it really comes down to them being paid as an agency to do this, to say that a parent wanted to act in their own autonomy to choose health for their child, as we know, we've ran into this problem. How is it beneficial for them to say, oh, well, you lose that freedom because our opinion matters? And it's not about you getting a second opinion.
That's the word right there, Brian, opinion.
Yep.
Their opinion. Lucas and I met with our previous director, and he couldn't have said it more times than enough. He was like, opinions do not matter. He does not want his social workers and managers going out and voicing their opinions. They need to have facts.
Yes. And let's say,
and I love that because that is so very true. We all have our own opinions. How I parent, how someone else parents.
Yep.
And
if there's
we all have different ways that we parent. There is no general guidebook, and there should never ever be a guidebook on parenting because everybody parents differently.
And if there's no neglect,
ma'am or sir does not matter.
Yeah, and if
and
there's
it should not be upheld in
and
the courtrooms.
and if there's
You
no
need to have
neglect, there's no imminent danger.
right. You need to have
How
facts.
can they? And even if they were right, as Lucas was saying, is there truly a benefit to proving that you're right by severing the family bond? That doesn't sound beneficial to me. Because even if your opinion was more correct, let's say, sake of argument, which I would say in a lot of these cases, they're not, because it's really just an opinion of whether or not you should get your vaccine or you should get your, or, you know, I don't know all the cases, but I'm just really just speculating here as far as what if they were right? What's the true benefit in their fiduciary capacity? And do they have to prove the benefit? Best interest of the child, that's just a blanket statement. You know, so I'm very.
Yeah, it is, and you know, our original. If you actually look up in, which is interesting because I just recently stumbled upon this. If you look up the judge's rule book or guidebook, there's like a mini book too. There's two of them. It was actually given to us by the department, and then I kept looking through it and stumbled upon more sections of it that I appreciated. It actually lays out that the court documents on those the Child Protective Act petitions that are submitted by prosecutors and such, they read in the best interest of, but the book, this guidebook that they're supposed to go by, it's supposed to be in the matter of.
Oh yeah,
not best interest of. That's a big difference, and they mean two totally different things.
By the way, quick side question, somebody in the comments asked, do the newspapers still allow letters to the editors where we can address inaccuracies in articles like this?
To my knowledge, they do. Yeah.
And I intend on writing a letter to them and pointing out some of the inaccuracies, because this is just that is a garbage piece that they wrote about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yep.
Yeah, we're trying to do good here, and we would appreciate that if they're going to write if anyone is going to write anything further from this point on, that they do their facts, and perhaps come and interview Lucas and myself, or just Lucas since he's the legislator on this. But you know, make sure you got facts.
Is there anything else in the? Oh, go ahead.
You know, Brian, just to kind of go back about two steps here. We were talking about what the proper role of government is with all of this, right? And two quotes that I would like to make. The first one is our founding father, Thomas Jefferson. At his first inaugural address, he spoke the famous words, "A wise and frugal government, which shall restrain men from injuring one another, shall leave them otherwise free to regulate their own pursuits of industry and improvement, and shall not take from the mouth of labor the bread it has earned. This is the sum of good government."
Yeah.
Okay. That's quote one. I'd like everybody to dwell on that for half of a second. And then, you know, getting back to the crux of parental rights, where does this, you know, where does CPS come in? Where does come in? Where do the parents come in? Well, this has withstood Supreme Court scrutiny, right? And I'm borrowing this from my soon-to-be future sister-in-law, Rachel Hazlip, over Idaho Freedom Foundation. She wrote kind of a parallel article about child protective services here back in December, I think it was. Anyway, she wrote in her article, and I think this is very important, and I apologize, I'm not looking at the screen, but what it says here, what she wrote is that U.S. constitutional law has long reflected the understanding of the foundation of national morality must be laid in private families, right? Though not explicitly enumerated in the Constitution, the U.S. Supreme Court has consistently held under the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment that parents have a fundamental right to direct the upbringing, education, and care of their children. In the landmark case Pierce versus Society of Sisters from 1925, the Supreme Court ruled that a child is not the mere creature of the state. And in Troxell versus Granville in the year 2000, it confirmed that it is the fundamental right of parents to make decisions concerning the care, custody, and control of their children. In Troxel, the court further described this as perhaps the oldest of the fundamental liberty interests recognized by this court. I mean, what are we doing, Idaho?
Wow. Yeah.
Well stated, Lucas. Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. There was also one too I was looking for because I had it in a video of what you were talking about. It speaks to when we allow people to choose our food and our medicine for us, and that was also by one of the founding fathers. It basically comes around to saying you're speaking to a tyrant, because we've already seen these things repeat in history, and I think it's challenging because some people, they hold this belief of, I've been talking to so many families, as you know, working on this film, and so many of them have told me there's another pattern that exists in human behavior, is that naturally, and it matches like Milgram's electric shock study, where, obedience and authority, a lot of people, they can't perceive that this would actually happen unless this person has really done something wrong, because from the outside, they're like, well, if CPS is doing that, you must be doing something wrong. Well, come to find out, no, more often than not, these cases actually really are just so bizarre and crazy and outlandish that they need to be investigated. They need to be audited. And so I really appreciate what you guys are doing, because this, and not to mention the people that are doing the jobs, like the social workers or the staff members or what have you. I mean, it'd be no different than going into a gas station and you're being told by that boss to do things the wrong way. How do you know? You don't know any better. I mean, you should, if you ask me, if you're doing any kind of social work or government job like that, you should know the Constitution better. But that's my opinion.
I have to say, absolutely, I totally agree with you. I have to say one quick thing here too, because I don't know how much longer we're going to have here, but one of the things that helped drive my wanting to make a change and wanting to make the system work more for the parents, for the public, was my social worker that I had assigned to me. And out of respect, I'll keep her name private for right now. But we had a meeting together in a CPS office after we had those recorded rooms where families who know this, they understand when you visit your child at CPS, you have them in a recorded room, right? They observe you, they record you. So after that was over, she asked me to stay for a little bit so we could talk. And she expressed to me that, now this was 8 months into my case, and my case was a total of 16 months that my son was removed from my care. At 8 months, halfway through, she said that there was no abuse and no neglect in my case. And I said, great, let's go tell the judge that and get me my son back. And she said, no, it's not her job. Ma'am, yes, it is. That is absolutely your job. She then further told me in that same conversation that if she had the time, she would be reversing half her caseload, 50% at least, because they don't belong in foster care. Wow. I don't know what drove her to be so honest and open with me, but I am an open and honest person, so we share that perhaps. And and then she ended the conversation with telling me one more thing real quick, is that whatever is said by the state, the judge will do. So whether it's a social worker or a prosecutor, the judge will listen to and do. And boy, was that ever true. That I have found that to be true in all the cases that have come my way, all the cases that all the parents that have said anything to me, they're like, we don't understand why our voice doesn't matter in the courtroom. It's because it doesn't. So I appreciated the honesty, and that really drove me to do some more work to make these bills happen and to work with others to make this happen.
Yeah. Can I say one more thing real quick, Lucas? Because I want to hear your perspective as a lawmaker and in this position. One thing I keep hearing, from a concerned citizen standpoint and from all these families that I've been talking to, a lot of people are aware that we don't need more laws. They should just follow the law the way it is. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. And so one thing I appreciate about what you guys are doing with the bills is that, without getting conspiratorial, even though we know some things are true about the reform that's needed in so many different departments and auditing that needs to happen, but let's just put all that aside and say we'll give them the benefit of the doubt that they just are interpreting things wrong. Well, at least at the end of the day, what more legislation can do is shine a light on these shadowy areas so that, well, now it's not as murky. There's not as much confusion about how to interpret what to do here. So it seems like that's one of the great things you guys are doing is you're shining more light in these corners that had a shadow there before, that they could have used ambiguity, or it could have been some sort of misinterpretation. I'm really thankful that that's what this can do. And that, to me, if you ask me, that kind of puts a whole kibosh to articles like this that come out where it's like, listen, if there's anything that's true about government, they need a lot more direction from us. And that's just fact.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the whole and the purpose and the intent of the law is to provide a structural framework that has a basis in morality of how we live our lives and conduct ourselves to keep us from killing each other, right? And the government is not exempt from that requirement to live under the color of law, right? They're required. That's why we have laws written, is to direct government to provide a framework and side guards for which they operate under, and what they're allowed to operate within a certain set of standards. And so this isn't anything new. We're not reinventing the wheel here. We're not coming up with something new and outlandish that's never been heard before.
Yeah, and the majority of the U.S. states have medical neglect defined. We're one of the few that don't.
That's a good point.
Right.
Yep.
Sorry, Lucas, go ahead.
And, sorry about my camera here. One of the things that I really wanted to talk about really quick was the funding mechanism, okay? If there wasn't money that was available for the Child Protective Act that is currently written into Title 16, I could guarantee that this would be a completely different time and place in American history that we're living in, and we're talking about. 1974, the Child Protective Act was passed by Senator Walter Mondale, senator from Minnesota. And with the passage of this federal legislation, it gave the promise to any state that passed a Child Protective Act of massive amounts of federal funding to support that, right? Mm-hmm. And so every single state, to include Idaho, all 50 states have passed some type of Child Protective Act to date. And, just going over the numbers from 2025, because for fiscal year 2026 that we're still currently in, we had approximately, so between state funds and federal funds, we were looking at about $130 million that is funded to foster care and to youth safety and permanency, right? That's a mixture of federal and state both. And the federal portion is off the top of my head, I'm trying to remember, but it's funded in about a 40 to 60-ish ratio. And that's all Title IV, E, and B funds from the federal government that are coming in that are supporting these two programs. And, right, wrong, or otherwise, I'm not trying to impugn anyone's character here, but health and welfare here in the state has a active initiative since 2024 to double the amount of foster care homes in the state. And I can guarantee you, if the money wasn't there, they wouldn't be trying to do this. If the money wasn't available, this program for youth safety and permanency wouldn't be as big as it is. As it is, the Department of Health and Welfare under Health and Human Services has the singularly largest appropriation out of every single agency budget within the state of Idaho. It takes up approximately, nearest figures off the top of my head, about 39 to 42% of our entire state budget, to the tune of about $5.4 billion.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Okay, that is not an insignificant amount of money, folks. These are your tax dollars, both state and federal, and mine, that are funding this monstrosity.
Yep, and I know I never voted on there to be any incentivizing of destroying families. That's how I feel about it. Yeah, that's just crazy. Was that what you were going to share before I jumped in? Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Anything else, you guys? I mean, other than the fact that, Kristine, I know you mentioned it's very important that people reach out to your local legislators now to express your, how can I say, demand for support for these things, for these bills?
Yeah. If you are, and for those of you that have questions, that are concerned, that you have genuine concerns of why this should be a bill, call Lucas, email us, one of us, both of us. We'll come meet with you. I continue to meet with people. I don't have a problem with that as long as we're being respectful to each other. Or we can talk about some things on the phone if you don't want to meet in person. But, I think that concerns matter both ways, whether you're for or against it, because this is human beings. These are children and families. And it affects every single one of us, even if you don't have a child or your child is grown. It's still going to affect you. You're going to know somebody in your life. And for those of you don't, you know me, you know your neighbors. We all know somebody where this has affected somebody in their life. And I think it makes a big difference. But yeah, if you know your legislator, great, reach out to them, ask them your concerns, ask them if they support this bill and how you can help, understand things a little better and why we're bringing it. We have a link, I think, Bryan, we're going to share, I believe, that is a link to find your local Idaho legislator.
Yep, it's in the comments. Yep,
okay,
they can get to that right there. It's the pinned comment. Should be pinned, yep.
Perfect. Yeah, because I know we've got some in the community that they don't know,
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't into any of this until this stuff started happening, and I realized that it wasn't just me that it was happening to, and
yeah,
I couldn't just sit back and watch it happen. And, I'll never forget one of the very first meetings I had with somebody from IDHW. I really appreciated his time. He came and he met with me, not once or twice, but several times. And he said, if it was anybody else, they would just get up and walk away. And he goes, you have such a big heart for taking this on. And I thanked him for that, because especially coming from Idaho Health and Welfare, somebody from that division. But how do you look away when somebody is begging you for help because they've been wrongfully accused?
Right. Can I ask you guys, I don't know if you have to jump off now, but if it would be helpful to this message, do you feel like you want to say what's going on with the other four?
Yeah, I'll talk about them real quick. So, and I kind of briefly alluded to this earlier, or mentioned it rather, the medical kidnap bill, which is really kind of the big bill that all of the rest of the other four bills are kind of hanging off, is Kristine and I have been in talks with the Health and Welfare Department, with Jean Fisher. She is the director of the Youth Safety and Permanency Division. They don't like the bill at all. They feel like the bill is too broad, that we're going to be putting cops and healthcare workers and everybody else in handcuffs, that children are just absolutely going to be being neglected, and it's going to create a situation where everybody's scared to report. And I don't think that's the case at all. It's just there needs to be statutory safeguards put into place so that people understand that there are legitimate ramifications and consequences, statutory consequences for breaking the law. You don't have the right as a healthcare worker or a social worker or a law enforcement officer to file or make a false report of medical neglect where there is, in fact, no medical neglect or abuse that's happening.
That's
Have
right.
your facts right. Make sure that what you're reporting is accurate and to the point. And I think by and large, probably the majority of people that are in these communities are trying to do the right thing. And I think they legitimately care about helping society and helping children. And my hat's off to them. I appreciate their efforts. But it's these isolated cases, that pop up occasionally, or maybe less occasionally, but like, for Kristine's example, the story that she had with her son. I'm sorry, even if one person, if that happens to one person, that's not acceptable. Okay, there needs to be a structural change There needs to be a change to our statute so that this kind of thing doesn't repeat. Because if it's allowed to happen once, precedent is set, and it just continues and continues and perpetuates itself. So that's the medical kidnap bill. Kristine and I are working on that. We're trying to, and Kristine, we actually need to talk about this offline, but what we need to finish doing to that bill to get that bill presentable to the committee so that we can get the committee chairman on board with it. That's first. Then the other bills that we need to get heard, the social worker and training bill. We're trying to provide resources for our agency social workers so that they're not flying blind out there in the field. They're traditionally the very first ones that are on scene when a CPS investigation is initiated. And we want them to, be good, solid people, people that are hired by the agency. They're of sound mind. They're capable of doing the job. They have a good fundamental understanding of Idaho statute, of the Idaho Constitution, understanding the bounds of parental rights versus agency responsibilities. There is a Title 16 language rewrite that we have written and presented that's currently being held in committee. And this is a real simple one, but this applies to Title 16, which is the Child Protected Act as a whole. And what we've done is we have gone through, and anywhere where it said like preponderance of evidence or reasonable evidence, we have one-lined that and we've replaced it with a higher evidentiary standard of language, clear and concise evidence. As everybody hopefully should know, preponderance of evidence is a very low bar. It means that there's a 50-50 chance that this crime happened +1, okay? And when we're talking about separating children from their parents, which is going to forever alter the course of that child's life, I'm sorry, I personally believe, as do many others, that there needs to be a higher evidentiary bar and standard that's raised before child separation takes place. And then the last one is our CPS registry database reform. And we sat, Kristine and I, and the attorney that we've been working with the health and welfare agency directors last night. And we kind of tore that bill apart. And I think that we're going to potentially look at going maybe a slightly different direction with that, Kristine. But yep. Definitely not off the hook. That bill is not going away. But then, so that's kind of the update on where our legislation is at. Again, we did get a bill, the medical neglect bill, introduced today. So that's a net positive. That's a win. We're making forward progress. And then I think before we wrap up here, the last thing that I want to leave with people is know your rights. Okay? If you're a parent, you have the right to remain silent. You do not have to, and you can look this up in Title 16 of Idaho Code, you do not have to engage or talk to a Child Protective Services social worker. You do not have to answer the door. You do not have to let that social worker or that police officer who doesn't have a warrant come in your house and investigate and look around. You do not have to submit your young minor child for questioning to a CPS social worker, okay? It is important that parents know their fundamental rights as outlined in Title 16 of Idaho Code. A child protective worker, a social worker, is never authorized to take your child away. He or she cannot take your child away without there being a law enforcement officer there, without there being a standing court order from a judge authorizing the removal of the child. So again, people, know your rights. Okay, this is the first part of this battle. Is if you don't know your rights, you're going to lose your rights, and if you don't practice your rights, your rights will be taken away from you.
Yeah,
That's right.
I really appreciate you saying that. Let me see what you say about this. And if you don't have an answer, totally fine, because I know this might be an attorney's area. But some people say it's great if you come across a video online that shows you how to do that, but they will come back. And then at that point, what would you say?
They still have to have a warrant.
What?
Have a
Well,
warrant.
for one, they have to have a warrant. Yeah, exactly what Lucas was just saying. Yeah.
And a police officer does have the discretion to be able to remove a child under imminent harm and danger, and that does have to come from a court.
Mm-hmm.
That is court order provided, as I understand. Like, there's no workaround.
And there's some that have said we don't have to have a warrant. Have you seen those? I've seen some of
Yeah,
those.
they
videos.
would be wrong. They would be wrong,
They're wrong.
especially what
Okay.
was it, the 2023-24 case? We were just talking about it. And actually, I appreciate Monty. He sent a copy of it to me.
Awesome.
Yeah, they just, pure and simple, they need to have a warrant.
So
that warrant had better be valid with actual facts, not false allegations.
Mm-hmm.
Right. This is America.
That's going to be the next thing that we see is more and more warrants that have false allegations on them.
Mm.
Yeah, we need to go back to the legal precedent that we have operated under as an Americans, that we are presumed innocent until proven guilty. And I've said this 1,000 times as we've been working through these bills and giving updates and press conferences and stuff on this CPS legislation, is that legal precedent that we have operated under as a country doesn't really apply when it comes to family law and to child protective services. It's based on a very low evidentiary standard of preponderance of evidence. And if they think that there's something going on, if they think that there's a hint of abuse or neglect, the child is just, it seems to be they're taken away without there being a higher standard to be able to substantiate that claim of evidence or abuse.
Yeah. And you know what? I had
and one of those problems is that we, as a state of Idaho, still allow hearsay when majority of the U.S. states have struck hearsay. You need to have actual proof, actual evidence.
And there was something that hit me the other day when I was thinking about preponderance of evidence and beyond a reasonable doubt. And I was like, how messed up is this? That we have beyond a reasonable doubt for criminals to protect families from crime. Why do we have preponderance of evidence to protect families from abuse?
Crime?
Like what? Harm, neglect?
It is crime.
That
you can
makes
say it.
that it's crime. And how about the system itself? Because the thing about the criminal is they're even protected from the system with beyond a reasonable doubt. So why is the criminal more protected than the families?
So when we talk about this, and then we just talked about this last night in our meeting, and I appreciate Attorney Johann Klaus for being there in attendance and helping us through this, navigating it and such. But I believe it was Jean who stated, well, there's a difference. You've got criminal, and then you have civil, and that's where the difference is. And civil for the child protective case is where preponderance lies.
Well, and that also spills over into the other subject that we were talking about, which is the CPS registry database bill, right?
Right.
We were talking about that and trying to figure out the nuances of why. Let's take for example the sex offender registry. You as and I'm not talking about either of you. I'm just talking about a hypothetical you. If you're a convicted sex offender, you get whatever charges that are pressed, you're convicted, you do your time before you're released out into society. You have to be on the sex offender registry database, right? But the Child Protective Services registry database, it seems like people are getting put on that without there being any actual charges, either civil or criminal, that's levied against the alleged perpetrator. And I'm sorry, we're talking about rights of due process that are being violated here.
Yeah, did you say that Johan had mentioned that it was because it was civil, that's why they were justified it that way?
No, it was Jean. Jean had mentioned that there's two different cases. You've got criminal, and then you have civil. Right. And civil is where you have the CPS cases happen. Right. They happen in magistrate court.
Right.
So that's why there's a difference there, because their level of evidence is much lower.
They're trying to say that's their justification for using preponderance of evidence instead of, which to me is silly because that seems to be in conflict with the fact that it doesn't matter if it's civil or criminal, we still have due process, like you said, and we also have the right to a fair trial, which how do you have a fair trial if it's not based on, I mean, because this whole thing, it just seems kind of bizarre to me that it wouldn't be across the board. What, do any of you guys know when that definition of preponderance of evidence ever came into play?
I believe it's always been there for the Child Protective Act. I mean, it's civil.
I mean, in our form of government, because it makes me wonder if that was another one of those little slates of hand that came throughout history that, oh, we got a new definition, because they love defining things and writing up new, you know, because to me it seems silly. When you have a fair trial, it's evidence-based. It's not, oh, well, it's the teeter-totter's starting to weigh that way, so let's say that, you know, sometimes things are deceiving based on perspective. And so that's why we have the beyond a reasonable doubt, because that's what protects a person to be innocent until proven guilty. How are you innocent until proven guilty with preponderance of evidence? That almost seems like that doesn't really align with that principle.
Well, let's take this one step further, right? What about Sixth Amendment rights violations? The right to be able to face your accuser, the right to a speedy trial, an impartial jury and legal counsel. So Idaho is one of the states that the reporter can remain anonymous.
Oh, and that's really interesting you bring that up, because we just had a case won here locally, and don't need to bring their names up because you guys already know who they are. They just won because that was one of the arguments, was show us the accuser. That's their constitutionally protected provision here, or provision that protects that for what you're saying about their kids, because the two parents were still together. It was the state trying to claim somebody made a claim against them. Well, show us who they are. And and it makes you wonder if that's why they overturned it, because they didn't have anybody. Or
they didn't have, well, I believe in that case, the judge, from what the attorney was telling me, the judge kind of, quote unquote, let the state be served a warning, because they're not bringing evidence.
Yeah,
there was no evidence in the case at all, and they took these children unlawfully.
And you guys know,
so they were returned. Just so everybody knows, they were returned that same day when the judge handed that down. So they do have all their children. And actually, the mom reached out to me today and showed me a picture that instead of the department knocking on their door and bringing them the rest of the children's things that were still in the foster care home, they left them at her place of business, just kind of strung out along her sidewalk right there. And she showed me a picture of it, and I just thought, well, that is just disrespectful. You know, okay, so you were wrong on something. These are children's belongings. You don't just toss them like that.
Yep. I agree. And I just figured that was interesting that you had said that about the right to face your accuser, because as you and I know, the state is actually a fictitious entity. It can never be an injured party. So for them, if they accuse you of something, that's what also blows my mind, that they don't have to have beyond a reasonable doubt, because they can't be an injured party. So how can you know, because now we're basing it on opinion again. Preponderance of evidence is sort of an opinion. It's like, I mean, in a matter of speaking, right? It seems odd to me that the state has convinced us all that they can have a dog in the fight, or that they have an interest, but they can't have an interest. They don't exist as what's that?
They do have an interest. They've got millions and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of funding to come in to support the occupation of which they are employed.
Right. That is true. Yeah, I commend you guys for doing all this work and burning the midnight oil and being willing to do this and let me help you. I'm honored to be able to help in any way I can. This is so important. I know there's a ton of people that are so grateful for what you do too, because somebody's got to do this. There has to be somebody that speaks up for these voices that can't speak for themselves.
Yeah, and just to prove our point, we just got another new case. Lucas, I'll be texting you on this later.
Okay.
Well,
So,
thank you.
Very good.
Well, if you guys don't have anything else, I'll show everybody the reminder here to
Yes,
please
please.
call your local legislators, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Call your local legislators and let them know you want this bill. You want this to get through, and we want to show up for testimony.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And we have quite a handful already ready to go whenever we are in the know of a date for that testimonial hearing. They are ready to speak and express their support and their concerns as to why we need a bill like this in statute.
Amazing. Great.
Yeah, thank you both for being here tonight. I appreciate it.
Yeah, great to share some time with you guys and hear your perspectives on this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's good as always. I love visiting with both of you.
Thanks.
Thank you for all your work, guys. Talk to you soon.
All
Bye-bye.
right, have a good night.
Okay, we're out. So, well, I was supposed to be. Forgive me, guys.